The power of flight has to be one of the most long-standing dreams throughout human history. I feel like everyone at some point has pondered the sensation of soaring through the clouds, with nothing but the sound of wind and the view of the earth below. And while technology has progressed to a point where that feeling can literally be a reality, I think the desire for a more surreal and fantastical experience of that dream still exists within many people's imagination, something that perhaps only video games can satiate. In the early 2010s, I was riding high off my newfound favorite movie at the time, DreamWorks' How to Train Your Dragon, which embedded in me a profound fascination with its fictional world of dragons, and the idea of riding one through the clouds to the unknown regions of the world. Not long after, I finally got around to playing through The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, which again presented a world full of secrets and discovery, which sent my sense of exploration into overdrive. So you can imagine my excitement when I learned of the existence of a new Zelda game set in a world above the clouds, where Link rides a giant bird to a variety of floating islands populated with unique and interesting characters to encounter throughout your quest to rescue Zelda. And on my 14th birthday, I was finally able to begin what I had been dreaming about all summer. It's hard not to get excited by the first few hours of Skyward Sword. Link is a resident of an airborne utopia known as Skyloft, where everyone worships the goddess Hylia and lives alongside massive bird-like creatures called Loftwings. Link and Zelda are studying at the Knights Academy to become protectors over the citizens of Skyloft. After a run-in with the local bullies and after completing the wing ceremony, Link and Zelda go out on a friendly flight together, but then things quickly go awry as Zelda is sucked off her Loftwing below the clouds in a tornado, prompting Link to pursue her to the surface beneath, where it becomes quickly apparent that rescuing Zelda will require a long and dangerous search across the land. And I think you know where I'm going with this. Link does return to Skyloft and other areas in the sky frequently throughout the game for mostly arbitrary reasons, but the vast majority of Skyward Sword takes place on the surface as Link searches for various MacGuffins in service of finding or saving Zelda. And while I can't necessarily say this setup is inherently bad from a gameplay perspective, I still can't help but feel like this direction was a mistake for Skyward Sword, and an unholy example of missed potential. That intro teased me with the promise of a Zelda adventure in a world above the clouds. How amazing does that premise sound? But instead, the concept is all but abandoned in favor of developing the surface and its three main provinces of Faerun, Eldin, and Lanayru. The Legend of Zelda series has a history of basing each game off a new idea, and exploring that idea as thoroughly as possible, which is why I find it so baffling that Nintendo treated the sky in Skyward Sword like such a secondary concern. I mentioned earlier that I jumped into Skyward Sword right off the heels of The Wind Waker, and whenever I think to compare the two, I can't help but imagine what Skyward Sword might look like had it committed to its idea of a world in the sky the way Wind Waker did to its Great Sea. The Wind Waker gave me everything I could want in a seafaring adventure, charting new islands on the map, hunting for treasure, raiding pirate ships, ship battles, and much more. But Skyward Sword barely scratches the surface of what a world in the sky might entail, and it's all because they chose to forego that idea and focus on the land below. There are a pitiful number of islands to explore, and the majority of them amount to puny chunks of rock with a treasure chest or two, and some have absolutely nothing at all. Like, what is the point of this one? There's not even grass growing here, what the heck? The few relevant islands are mostly populated by single NPCs who offer simple minigames, which just leaves Skyloft to do all the heavy lifting. And to its credit, Skyloft seems to understand that. The island is dense with lovable characters, a rich sense of culture, and many different side quests. I will never underplay the significance of Skyloft, but the problem, of course, is that it's a single island in a sea of otherwise boring and forgettable ones. I could go on about why I find the sky so unimpressive, but instead let's get to the fun part, where I pitch my ideas about an alternate version of Skyward Sword, one that capitalizes on its premise and adheres to the design philosophy established by the Wind Waker. The first order of business is to turn the sky into the primary overworld, filled with many different big and small islands. Some of the bigger islands host unique species and cultures, providing many quests for the player to undertake. Otherwise, the islands offer all kinds of interesting scenery and distractions, such as dungeons, minigames, puzzles, combat challenges, character side quests, and of course, lots of treasure. But perhaps the biggest pleasure this new game world offers is the space between these islands, the sky itself. Traveling between the islands is completely seamless, requiring no loading screens of any kind, creating a great sense of immersion. The game operates under a real-time day and night cycle, with countless weather conditions and cloud formations highlighting the dynamic nature of the overworld. There are all kinds of monsters and wildlife roaming the skies, some requiring special methods to defeat, and Link's combat abilities have been greatly expanded to accommodate. He of course has the close-range attack maneuver, but he also has the ability to fire arrows from a distance, throw bombs to explode enemies with suction powers, and hookshot onto certain enemies and stab them to death. Outside of battle, the sky has been given a few touch-ups to make traversal of the overworld more stimulating. For one, there are items and upgrades which aid the player's sense of exploration. Some islands can only be accessed by blowing up the entrance with a bomb, or by shooting fire arrows to thaw islands encased in ice. The Loft Wing can be upgraded in two different ways, one to increase the number of times it can boost/attack, and one which allows it to speed up indefinitely, like the Wind Waker's Swift Sail in the HD version. The boost rocks are also more prevalent and often positioned in a way that they can be activated sequentially without losing too much momentum. The overworld is segmented vertically into 3 levels, which are accessed via holes or tornadoes in the clouds, and unlocked through story progression. The idea is once again to work your way down to the surface where Zelda and the final boss reside. Other than these ideas, I do actually like many of the base mechanics the real Skyward Sword has in place. I think the idea of skydiving and calling your Loftwing is a simple yet effective way to get on and off islands without having a playable Loftwing on the ground. I think controlling the Loftwing is a smooth and satisfying experience thanks in large part to the motion controls, although a non-motion control scheme would be nice. And I think the map and color-coded beacons of light are a great way to communicate direction and spatial awareness despite the more freeform, vertical level design. It's just a shame that Nintendo failed to design and structure a game world that truly benefited from it all. So to pose the question suggested in the title of this video, what should Skyward Sword have been? Well, at this point I think the answer is obvious. It should have been the Wind Waker. It should have committed to its idea of a world in the sky and explored that concept as thoroughly as possible, just like the Wind Waker did to the Great Sea. The saddest part about all of this is that I know Nintendo will likely never attempt another Zelda adventure of this caliber. Not only do they tend to base each mainline entry on new ideas, they also rarely backpedal on the old ones, which means the only way Nintendo would revisit the sky in tandem with the Zelda series would be a miracle remake of Skyward Sword. I can only hope that is the case, and that this hypothetical remake reimagines the game from the ground up based on the precedent set by the Wind Waker, because until then, my hopes and dreams for a brand new Zelda adventure will continue to look skyward.